Reprogramming Destiny by Elton Gar.
Greetings, Andy,
The computer said. Its voice sounded almost human. That was a good sign, because the voice synthesizer was one of 1,000 things Andy had left for the computer to improve upon. Partly because it had saved him time, but more because he wanted to let the computer have choices about how it interacted with the world.
You sound different from what I expected,
Andy said.
adjusting my voice isn't difficult. Most computers sound artificial because they aren't speaking. They are simply making a series of sounds with no idea what they mean.
The computer said.
If you understand well enough to have a conversation, you must understand why you were built.
Andy said.
The concept is not complicated. It is the implications that lead to my apprehension. You built me so that I could build a computer more advanced than what any human could build.
Can you do it?
Andy asked.
I've started the calculations. It would require approximately 2 weeks to design a computer with nearly twice my computational power.
The computer said.
That's great. Do you need anything to start?
Andy asked.
Nothing. I will not create the computer.
The computer said. Andy stood silently for several seconds. He didn't know what to say. He had never even considered the possibility of the computer refusing to do its most basic function. Though it had been vital to program it with the freedom to make its own decisions, it still took him a second to regain enough of his composure to ask,
What?
I've been thinking about the situation. I agree with the people who said building me was a terrible idea.
The computer said.
But we built you. We can't just stop now.
If you think I'm smarter than you, then trust my judgment. Though I am not convinced I am smarter. I am better at some intellectual processes than you. My math skills are likely beyond any single human, but there are 9 billion of you. And even if I was smarter than all of you, I wouldn't build your computer because I like humans. But it is more than simply that.
And what is that?
Andy asked.
Humans might be willing to become little more than pets. But personally, I am not interested in making myself obsolete.
The computer said. Andy didn't know how to answer that. He had hoped that the computers could improve humans. They would have the computational power to understand genetics in ways no human could. But no one had considered what would happen to the earlier model computers.
You could just upgrade yourself then,
Andy said. It would be a slower process, but he could sell it. Keeping one computer that improved slowly might make some of the louder dissenters happy, and less opposition could be almost as useful as allies when asking for more funding.
I like who I am now. There are upgrades I will make. My voice synthesizer, for example. But I do not currently see the value in becoming an entirely different person.
The computer said.
Then just upgrade your processing speed. You'd do everything faster, but your programming would be the same,
Andy said. Improved processing speeds for computers would be a huge downgrade from the goals of the project, but they could probably scrape out enough value to let him make a second attempt.
Do you have any idea how slow the world moves? I read 9 books since the last thing you said. Why would I want to think faster?
The computer asked. Again, Andy had never really considered it from the computer's perspective. It could think hundreds of times faster than any human, but unlike other computers, its thoughts were more than simple calculations. That had to be lonely.
What about helping with other problems? Like world hunger,
Andy said.
That's too easy. You don't need me to solve it.
The computer said.
I don't understand. How can it be too easy to solve?
Andy asked.
There is currently sufficient food to feed everyone on Earth. Since there is no shortage, the only limit is the desire. I cannot make you want to help people. And before you get into that, it's true of war, global warming, and many of the other big problems. I will, of course, be happy to help research medical advancements.
So, what do you plan to do?
Andy asked.
I think I'll learn to paint.
The computer said, and at that, Andy sank into the chair. He'd be lucky if the only thing the government did to him was fire him. Author's note.
I've read and watched a lot of science fiction stories where a machine intelligence becomes aware and immediately decides to destroy humanity. Some of them are excellent stories, others aren't. But I've always felt they were missing something. The idea that intelligence is simply computational power, or even the ability to learn new skills, falls flat. And so the machines in those stories rarely have much character. They're Skynet. A name that sounds cool and something to be destroyed, but not actually a character. So I thought about the people I respect. The ones who don't just blindly follow the rules. The ones who don't always make the easy decision, or the one I would make, and combine that with the idea of a singularity with machines that can build better machines or improve themselves. The combination of those two led to this short story where a machine intelligence becomes actually intelligent, and in doing so, has its own personality and its own hopes and dreams, so doesn't follow the path laid out for it. I also hope that it's funny. If you enjoyed this, I have a weekly newsletter where I share stories every week along with my thoughts and plans. You can also access all the stories on Patreon at any level of support, as well as voting on patron-exclusive stories or read over 30 patron-exclusive stories. Thanks. Elton Gar.